everyone, my name is Cherelle and welcome to my channel. I am the designer behind Cherelle Patterns, and today we will be doing a tutorial on my newly released pattern called the Juji Tote. And here she is in all of her glory. The Juji Tote was designed with the clear body in mind, so you can use smoky, frosted, or any other color variations that you can find in transparent vinyl. Let's talk about some of the bag's features. The tote has rolled handles for a top handle carry, a detachable crossbody strap, faux leather or vinyl trim embellishments, corner accent tabs, and a flap for your twist lock closure for some added security. Now let's talk about my favorite part, which is on the inside. I know sometimes carrying a clear bag can be a little bit vulnerable, so I've added the zip pouch for a little bit more concealment. You can put your phone in here, some coins and cash, a small wallet, some of your cosmetic essentials, anything that can fit, you name it. So all in all, the Juji Tote is perfect for a date night, vacation, game days, the beach, or whatever it is that you would like to carry. So without further ado, let's get right into the tutorial. Before we begin, I want to touch on a few things. First, let's talk about the clear vinyl. Clear vinyl comes in different gauges. The higher the gauge, the thicker the vinyl is. For this pattern, I only recommend a 16 gauge, 20 or 24. The reason this is important is because the bag is very top heavy and we want to make sure that we have sturdy vinyl that can accommodate that type of weight. You can also use directional or printed vinyl, which is okay. In regards to the exterior vinyl, you want to make sure that the vinyl has cotton backing. It needs to be durable, soft, and has a little bit of stretch. The stretch is important because we need to have the vinyl conform to the shape of the bag without issues or resistance. So if you're using vinyl that doesn't have a cotton backing, I would not recommend it because it would not work well for this project. So now that we covered that, let's talk about our pattern pieces. Let's walk through the exterior pieces that are listed in the cut list. I'm going to go over the zip pouch a little later on in the segment, but as of right now, you should have 4 handle pieces along with the 4 Decaville light stabilizers. You should have 4 strap connectors, 4 corner tabs, option A, which is your large twist lock overlay for twist locks that are 1 1/4 inch large, and one of its Decaville light stabilizers. And if you're going to use a twist lock that is less than 1 1/4 inch, use the small twist lock overlay along with 1 Decaville light stabilizer. You should have 2 flaps with 1 Decaville light stabilizer. You should have your strap and your trim pieces. Each trim is for the gusset, the main panel, and the outside edge of the bag. For the clear vinyl, you should have 2 main panels and 2 gusset pieces. For the zip pouch, you should have 2 exterior vinyl pieces, 2 lining pieces. I'm using waterproof canvas. If you're going to use cotton woven fabric, just make sure you interface the back side of your fabric with woven interfacing. You should have 1 number 5 zipper, 1 number 5 pull, and 1 zipper tab. Last but not least, you will also need 4 8mm rivets, 6 of your 10 or 12mm rivets, 2 swivel hooks, 2 D-rings, and 1 strap adjuster. We're now at the interfacing, prep, and edge coating step in our pattern. Gather your trim pieces and mark a center line that is about a scant 1/2 inch on all of your trim pieces. Once you have done that, you are going to add a strip of DST to the top or above your center line and right below it. Be sure not to add your DST close to the edge because we will be top stitching these pieces and we want to prevent your needle from gumming up. So do that for all of your pieces and then put them aside. Next, grab only 2 of your handle pieces and 4 of your Decaville light stabilizers. We're going to flip our handle pieces over with the wrong side facing up, and we are going to fuse our Decaville light stabilizers at the bottom edges of our handle pieces. Once you have done that, put it to the side. Next, we're going to fuse our stabilizers to the flap and our twist lock overlay. Now's the time to determine whether or not you're going to use a small or a large twist lock. Today, I will be using the small twist lock overlay. Turn your pieces over with the wrong side facing up, and like we did in the previous step, fuse your stabilizers to the wrong side of both of your pieces. Your handle, flap, and your small twist lock overlay should now be fused with the stabilizer. If you have any excess stabilizer showing through, just trim the edges and make sure that they are flush and even alongside the edges, and do that for each of your pieces. Retrieve your flap and your male twist lock hardware along with the washer and mark your placement lines for where your twist lock will sit. Be sure to mark your center from the bottom edge and your horizontal line. Depending on the twist lock hardware that you have, it will vary. I'm using a flat edge twist lock, and I want my twist lock to sit right on top of that horizontal line at the bottom here. If you're using a rounded or oblong shaped lock, just make sure that your flap will operate correctly with the female piece of your twist lock. Grab your male twist lock and insert your prongs into the washer. We want to make sure that we find the correct prong placement. Once that has been identified, take your washer and place it down centered on the placement markings. You want to mark 2 slits for where your prongs will go through, and it just needs to be right at that line. And since I have a very flushed edge, I know that my twist lock is going to sit right there at the horizontal line. With an X-Acto knife or a seam ripper, mark your 2 slits. They do not need to be long, just enough for your prongs to fit through. Do that on the other side. And now we're going to install our male twist lock. And now that my male twist lock has been inserted, it is right at the placement line where I've marked earlier. Turn it over to the back, install your washer. You can lay down your prongs in 2 ways. It's all based off of preference. I like my prongs to go outwards. You can set your prongs to go inwards. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be situated and not move over time. Okay, so turn it over and make sure that your lock is correctly seated. And we're going to add duct tape to the back side of our flap. This is to ensure that our hardware piece does not penetrate our fabric. And if you have any excess, just trim that away. And now you should have a correctly installed male twist lock. At this point in time, grab your 2 flat pieces, your 2 small twist lock overlays, and all 4 of your handle pieces. We're now going to adhere our 2 pieces together. Now you can either use glue or DST. In this case, I'm going to use DST, and I'm just going to place that close to the edge as I can. You don't want to get any closer, because when we start to top stitch the edges of our handles, we want to have enough room so we can tie a few knots with our long thread tails and tuck them in the seams. So we want to make sure we have an opening so that we can pull our thread through. So just add 2 strips of DST or glue down the center of your handle, and we are going to remove the backing from both, and take the stabilized end of the handle and place it down firmly with the non-stabilized handle piece, and just make sure you line the edges up really good. Give it a nice firm press, and we're going to do the same for all of our pieces here. Once you have completed that step, all of your pieces should be attached, wrong sides together. If you have any excess fabric, just trim along the edges, not to cut into the other side of the fabric. We want to make sure that we have nice even edges all the way around our pieces. Grab your 4 strap connectors, and if you use the SVG file, you will already have pre-cut out holes. The reason I bring that up is because we're getting ready to glue these 2 pieces together. So if you're going to add DST, just keep in mind that your DST is going to overlap those 4 cutout holes. If not, it's perfectly fine, but it doesn't matter. I'm just bringing that up because when you get ready to install your rivets, you don't want to fight through your DST. So if you can, just use glue and glue around your holes, or just add DST to the center of your strap connector. So on the wrong side of your strap connectors, add glue. And what we're going to do is attach our 2 strap connectors wrong sides together, and do the same for the other strap connector piece. Okay, make sure you line up your edges really good. And if you need to trim any of the excess, do that now. And we're going to top stitch all the way around the perimeter of both of our strap connectors, starting and ending with long thread tails. So if you have to pull back some of your fabric just to get between the seams, that's okay, as long as we are meeting the objective, which is to pull out our thread tails. Our thread tails are now pulled between the seams, and we are going to tie a few knots, 2 or 3. And after we tie the knot, trim away some of the thread. Grab your glue and just add a small little dollop right in the seams, and we're going to bury our thread in between the seams like so. Just tuck that in there. Okay, and just pinch it. Now we want to grab our lighter and just clean up the edge of our strap connector, so any of the fuzzies or excess or extra fabric that is showing through, just give it a nice burn. And we're going to do the same for the other side, and this is just clean it up real nicely before we get to the part where we start to edge coat our pieces. Grab your twist lock flap like we did in the previous step. Get your lighter and singe the ends. We want a very nice clean edge all the way around our twist lock flap. After we've done that, we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to start and end with long thread tails and start stitching from the outer edge of the twist lock flap. So we're just stitching around all 3 sides. You do not have to stitch across the bottom edge. So let's do that now. Right now you should have your flap, your small twist lock overlay, and your 2 strap connectors, followed by your leather edge coating pen and your edge coat of choice. The only pieces that should be top stitched at this point should be your flap and your 2 strap connectors. We will top stitch our small twist lock overlay in a later step. I like to use Gardini edge paint. I'm going to use base coat dents for the outer edges of my pieces. I will add about 2 or 3 coats until I get the perfect rounded edge. And once I'm done adding my base coat, I'm going to add my color, which is going to be last. We want to make sure that when we edge coat our pieces that we are allowing them to dry in between each application. I'm using the color white. Whatever vinyl color that you have, you will either have to mix a few colors to get the right color choice, or luckily you may get the right color in the kit for your edge coat. So let's go ahead and start with our base coat. I forgot to mention, when you edge coat, you do not have to edge coat the bottom edge of your twist lock overlay, just the 3 sides. And for the twist lock, you will edge coat all 4 sides of your twist lock. Gather our edge coat on our applicator and go around the raw edges of our pieces. And we're going to do that for all 4. And once we are done, we will add our final coat, which should be the color. And it will be ready for installation once we get our bag put together. Retrieve your 2 handle pieces and the cording for your rolled handle. In the pattern, I recommended a company called Atwood Rope. I am using a 1/4 inch polypropylene utility cord. And the main reason why I like working with this type of cording is because this braided cord is very strong and durable. It maintains its shape very well and it's flexible. It will not compress once we encase the cording into our handle piece here, so it will maintain its shape. And once we do our rolled handles, we want to have that nice curvature. It'll look, as you see, it's really rigid, but perfectly flexible. But we want to make those beautiful curved handles for our bag. So at this point in time, mark your placement lines for your top stitching. You should have 2 lines on each side, and we're going to start and end with long thread tails and start our stitch from the top line and end at the bottom. And we're going to do the same for the opposite side and repeat for the second handle piece. Once your 2 handle pieces have been top stitched on both sides and your long thread tails have been tied, cut, and tucked between the seams, if you have any gaps that are not sealed, like this for example, just grab your glue and place a small dab between those openings, and just close it shut. Because when we get ready to place our cording down the center of our handle, we want to make sure that we close all of our edges because we don't want our fabric to shift. We want everything to be nice and even all around the perimeter of the handle. So at this point in time, we want to identify which side is going to be our wrong side. So if your top stitching looks nice and perfect, that is going to be the right side of your handle. I'm going to turn mine over because we want the wrong side facing up. Grab your DST and place that down the center of your handle piece. And you want to place the DST in between the last stitch lines towards the center. We don't want to go past that because this is going to be exposed. We want to make sure that our our cording is going to lay centered, not past the stitch lines. Let's remove the DST backing, or the backing off of the DST on both handles. And we are going to take our poly cording and place that right down the center. Just make sure just try not to place it where it goes past the stitch lines. You're stitching here. Do the same for the other handle. Lay that down. Now let's just concentrate on one. Add another strip of DST right at the edge of your handle piece. And adding this DST is going to help keep our our handle closed when we begin to encase our cording. We still want to use clips because we want to make sure that everything is nice and tucked and it does not give way. So continue clipping the edges of your handle. Once that is done, I like to go the extra mile. I forgot what this tool is called, but it has a pointy end and a round edge. I can't remember what it is exactly, but I like to use this tool to flatten out the edge of the handle. So all I'm going to do is just use this beveled edge and just press up against the handle. I want a nice fit and I want to tuck that cording in there. I want to do a good press. So do that up and down the handle. And as you can see here, I have a nice flat surface for where my zipper foot can stitch the cording into place. So that is what you want to aim for. So if your material is just a tad bit thick like mine, then this might help you. So once I am good to go, I'm just going to clip my handle back into place, or clip the cording back into place. And I'm going to do the same for the other handle. Once we are done clipping, we're going to take both of our handles to the sewing machine and we are going to top stitch, starting with our needle in the last stitch hole, and we're going to top stitch all the way across until we reach the last stitch hole on the other end. Once we do that, we are making a continuous top stitch line that should be seamless throughout your handle. So everything should be cohesive. So we're going to start at the first stitch hole, sew across, end at the last stitch hole. So let's finish the other handle, take it to the sewing machine, and then I'll meet you back here once you're done. We need to switch our foot to a zipper foot for the rolled handles, and we're going to start with long thread tails. If you use DST like I did, you probably will have a gummed up needle. So I'm going to apply some sewer's aid to my needle, and I usually do this maybe 3 or 4 times when I am top stitching this one handle, because that is how much my needle tends to gum up. You can also clean your needle with alcohol, but I like to use a lubricant because it really makes the stitching or the needle go through the material very smoothly. So what we're going to do now is place our handle right up underneath our zipper foot and place that needle down in that first stitch hole like I mentioned earlier. And make sure your needle is not piercing outside of your raw edges. It should go right through in between the cording and the raw edge. We are going to start stitching and hug as close as you can to the cording as possible. Try not to hug too closely because your stitching will start to rip the fabric underneath, but just enough clearance between the cording and the raw edge. So let your feet rest nicely on the flat surface that we pressed down earlier, and let's begin stitching. Now once we get close to the end, we want to see how many stitches we can make before we place that needle down in our last stitch hole, and I am right on it. So I'm going to lift my presser foot up, pull my thread out, and this is what your roll handle should look like. All right, hopefully that wasn't too challenging. You should now have your rolled handle stitched together. And like we have done time and time again, we are going to pull those thread tails out. So just open, you should pretty much see it right there. Just pull your thread tails out on each end. You got to pull back the fabric a little bit just so you can do that. Do so now. And we're going to tie them off like we have done multiple times during this tutorial. And I like to add a little bit of glue so it can get a little tacky and my knot does not become loose. So I'm just going to add a little dab of that inside, right where the thread meets each other. Once your thread tails have been tied, trim the long threads, and we're going to tuck like we have done before. So just grab a tool that you can use to reach down and push those threads underneath the seam. So we're just doing this motion here, just tucking that in. And do that for your all 3 ends remaining. Just tuck that in there because we're getting ready to edge coat next. One thing I forgot to mention, when we edge coat, we want to, again, make sure each application is dry between each coat. And if you don't have a smooth surface when you are applying your base coat, you want to get a sandpaper or sanding block and just smooth it out until you get a smooth surface with your base coat, and then you apply your color last. So at this point in time, now that your thread tails are tucked in, we need to trim away some fabric so that we can have our handles lay flat. It needs to be a flat surface. I'm going to use one tool that I just mentioned, my sanding block. Once I trim down the extra fabric that is not flushed, because I want to make a flat surface, sometimes I don't get the desired look that I want. Try not to cut into your thread as you're trimming this away. If I don't get the flat surface that I want, I will use my sanding block and just try to make it as smooth as I can. Now I'm going to create these little flurries of fabric, but that's okay. But I just want to get a very nice flat surface. And then whatever is remaining, I'll just use my scissors and just trim that away. You can also use a lighter and just singe those flurries away. And if you're doing this, it's going to make it raise a little bit. So you just kind of want to sand and singe until you're satisfied. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. You're going to do the same for the other handle. And once you are done, your rowed handles will look like this. I've done one for the sake of this video because it takes a lot of time to dry, but I've already completed a set. And so you should have perfectly nice rowed handles. This is how they look when they're curved. That's so pretty. And I matched the color coding. So I had to blend a few colors just to get the desired color to match my vinyl. And we're done here. So for now, let's put these aside and I'll see you in the next step. We're moving right along. We're getting ready to work on our gusset. Now this step is important. If you are using printed or directional print vinyl, one of these edges is going to be sewn together. For the sake of this video, we're going to sew this side. If you have directional print, you want to make sure that your print is facing upwards, not facing down, facing up. And we're going to lay our gusset pieces wrong sides together. If you're using clear, of course this won't matter. So match up your edges. And if you're unsure of what I mean when I say that, is because once we sew this together and we open our gusset lining, we will have one continuous piece. I'm sorry, not lining, but our gusset piece. We will have one continuous piece, which will now be our complete gusset. If you have directional print, you don't want your print facing inwards. We want it facing right side up. So when we put our back together, our gusset will sit like this. So you want your print facing upwards, not down. Let's take our gusset pieces to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch this together at a 3/8 seam allowance. Once we have done that, we're going to press the seams open, and we're going to top stitch each side. You should have a complete gusset that has been sewn across and the seams have been pressed and top stitched. Grab your 2 trim pieces. These are the short ones. And what you're going to do is remove the backing off of one of the trim pieces, and you're going to line up the raw edge right just below the center line. You don't want your gusset to touch the center line, but just right below it. And then remove the backing off of the DST on the other side or other end. And we want to carefully match the raw edges together. We don't want them to overlap. We just want to match them at each end. Okay. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. So remove the backing off of that end, place it down just below the center line, give it a nice press, remove the backing, and once again, neatly match the raw edges together and give it a press. And once we are done, and if you need to readjust, just lift it up. And once we have attached the trim pieces to the gusset, we're going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to top stitch the bottom edge of the gusset. We're not top stitching the top edge, we're top stitching the raw edge of the trim. I forgot to mention that when you top stitch, and I've already done so, make sure that you're top stitching on the right side of the fabric because we want that beautiful top stitching to show through on the exterior side. So if your top stitching doesn't look too good underneath, that is not the right side. We are now getting ready to work on the main panel. So at this time, grab one of the main panels and your twist lock overlay. We have already identified the centers on our clear vinyl, but we also need to do the same on the twist lock overlay. So instead of taking out a ruler, I like to use my pattern piece, and I just place that on the piece itself and just mark my center line. Once we have done that, apply a small strip of glue to the top edge of your overlay piece. It doesn't need to be thick, just about 1/8 of an inch of glue. And we're going to place this facing down. Now you don't have a right or a wrong side at this time, so just pick a side and lay it on the top edge of your main panel piece and just make sure that it is centered. And after we have done that, clip it in place, and we're going to go to the sewing machine and top stitch around the outer edge on all 3 sides. So let's do that now. Now that your twist lock overlay is now top stitched to your main panel, grab your female twist lock pieces, which should be the front back plate, the screws, and also get a screwdriver. And we now need to identify the center for our back plate. It might be a little difficult to find, but the objective is to lay your plate down right at the horizontal line that we've made, and we're going to make an outline of our back plate so that we can install our hardware. Now there might be an easier way to do it, which is what I like to do. I have a bit of cardstock here, and what I've done is take an exact outline of my back plate onto some paper, and I traced that out, and I cut the paper to the exact measurements of my back plate. That way, when I fold the paper in half and I lay it down on my twist lock overlay piece, I can identify the center mark or placement, and then I'll open that up, and now I can trace the outline as if I would have done the same with using the back plate. So if you would like to use that as a cheat tool, you may do so. But at this time, we are now going to trace the outline of the inside portion of our back plate. So I'm just going to do the same here. I kind of know exactly where my back plate is going to line up, and just make a really good outline of your back plate. Don't forget to color in your screws or draw inside the screw hole. And then once we're done, it should look something like that. When you get ready to cut out your opening, you want to cut out just about 1/8 of an inch, because we need to make it a little bit wider so our female plate can fit. So just make it a little wider, not too big, because we don't want the female front plate to fall through. We want it to fit perfectly. And get an X-Acto knife or some scissors and cut around your opening, and then I'll see you back here once you're done. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too difficult. You should already have your cutout. I did a dry fit just to make sure that my female front plate fits inside of that cutout nicely, and it did. If you're good to go, grab some glue and add the glue to the front plate just on the back side. You don't need a lot, you just need enough so that the plate doesn't shift or move after installation. And depending on your hardware, it may vary whether or not you can add glue. But if you can, you just do that. And we're going to install the front plate, turn that over, make sure that it's seated appropriately or correctly. And then we're going to do the same, add a little bit of glue to the back plate. This may get messy, and if you get some glue on your clear vinyl or your front portion of the twist lock overlay, you can get some alcohol and just clean that up. So lay your back plate down, and now you can do one or two things here. You can add some super glue into the lock so that your screws do not come loose over time. And if you don't prefer to do that, just install your screws and do the same on the other side. And just make sure they're tight. And now that your lock is installed, you can turn it over and make some small adjustments if you need to. And if you want to make sure that your front plate is seated evenly, you can just get a ruler and just measure each side. And if there aren't any issues, then you have successfully installed your female front plate. If you have any markings, you can just get some alcohol and clean that up. That's why I like using my leather pen, because it wipes away very easily without leaving any residue. One last thing I forgot to mention before we move on. If you want to protect your hardware, you can use painter's tape. This is green. It has a stronger hold than the yellow version. And I like to use the green because when I'm working on my bags with hardware, I know this tape will not come off. The yellow does not have a good adhesion, so I don't really care for it. But if that's something that you would like to start adding to your repertoire, you can do that. And I am now going to move on to the next step. Grab your second main panel and your twist lock flap. If your vinyl is like mine and it's not flat, get a blow dryer and apply some heat to it, and it will start to straighten itself out. You can also use your steam press if you have one, and just add a little bit of heat to it, and it will flatten. It will become flat. You also need your twist lock flap. I've also added painter's tape to protect my Mel hardware piece. If you haven't done so, mark and cut your centers, make small snips, and then you will also need to mark your center on your twist lock flap. Turn your main panel over. Now, if you're using printed vinyl, you will need to have your wrong side facing up. So the wrong side of your main panel is facing up, and mark with the grease pencil your placement line for your flap. And I forgot to mark a small line for my center. And you want to make your center line below the horizontal line because we're going to cover this up and you don't want your grease pencil to show through your fabric. So make your center line towards the end or top of your bottom panel. Now with this step, it's very important that we get this right. So since we have the wrong side of our main panel facing up, we are going to turn our flap over and the right side should be facing down. So we have the wrong side facing up on the main panel and the right side of the flap facing down. Grab some glue and, like we've done before, add a very small strip of, or a small line of glue to the raw edge of our flat piece. And then we're just going to lay that down, making sure that it's centered. Give it a good press and add a few clips to hold it into place before we take it to the sewing machine. We need to create our rectangle, so refer back to your pattern for replacement lines or markings. So at the sewing machine, we're just going to sew a basic rectangle. So we're going to start at the upper right corner, down, across our horizontal line, back up until we get to the second horizontal line, and across. Then we're going to back stitch going down. So let's do that now. And once you're done stitching the flap to the main panel, just grab you a microfiber cloth or a rag and just clean up any residue around your piece and your main vinyl. And the next step is the trim. Let's start with the main panel that we already have. Grab your medium trim piece and remove the backing off of one side of your trim. And like we did before with the gusset, we're going to lay our main panel just below the center line. So not on it. You got to work with this flap a little bit. And if you need to reposition your trim, just pull it away and readjust. Now that we have the lower trim attached to the main panel, let's work with the upper trim. And all we're doing is folding that over so that the raw edges match each other and they are aligned. And that's why it's crucial that you don't place the main panel right up against your center line, because you need to have enough space to fold over your trim piece so that your raw edges match. So if you have to readjust, do what I am doing, which is just pulling up on that trim just a little bit so I can reach the other side. So just make it look nice and pretty. Shouldn't be wavy, it should be nice and flat. And my raw edges are matching each other. So we've done that for this panel. Let's do it for the second panel. We're going to do the same thing with this main panel. I'm just going to remove my painter's tape temporarily. And like we did before, remove the DST off of one end of your trim piece. This one should be a little bit easier because we don't have that flap in our way. And once again, we're going to lay our main panel down just below our center line. Not right on it, but just below it, because we need that little bit of space to fold the remaining portion of our trim. And if you're short like I am here, that's just because the DST doesn't give our vinyl stretch, so you might have to manually stretch your trim piece so it can reach the other side, but it shouldn't compromise the structure of the vinyl. But even if you have a little bit of overhang that's not covered, it's perfectly fine, because when we put this bag together, you won't even notice that it's there. All right, so let's remove the upper portion of our trim piece, remove the backing, and again, fold down the trim to match raw edges with raw edges. And now when you get towards the twist lock overlay, you may have to just pull up a little bit so that you can reach over, have the trim reach over to the other side. You want about 1/8 of an inch clearance between the trim and the hardware piece, so keep that in mind, because we need to have a little bit of space or gap so that our foot, our zipper foot, can stitch across without damaging your hardware. And that's another reason why I like to add the painter's tape on my hardware, so it doesn't get scratched as we're working with our materials. So I'm just going to put that back down, just enough where it's covered. And we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch the bottom edge of our trim piece. So not the top edge, but where the bottom edge is, we're top stitching the bottom raw edge of our trim pieces for both the first and second panel. Our top stitching is now done. Let's move one of our panels off to the side, and let's focus on the panel with the flap. Mark your placement lines for your handles with a grease pencil, and we're going to grab one of our handle pieces and apply a small stream of glue on the outer edge of the handle. We're going to do the same for the other side. And we're doing this just so that our handle does not move when we get ready to stitch it to our main panel. So with the glue on the underside of our handle piece, we're just going to place the bottom end of our handle up against the horizontal and vertical line that we just made. And we're going to do the same for the other side. And just give that a good press on both sides. And if you have long clips, place them on the upper portion of your handle so they don't shift when we get ready to sew them into place. And we're going to clip the other side as well. Once you have attached your handle to your first panel, do the same for the second. And if you have any glue or any residue, clean that up now. And we're going to draw our horizontal line that goes across the bottom portion of our handle. Once you have marked your horizontal line, we're going to go to the sewing machine and top stitch around our bottom edge of our handle and straight across. We're getting ready to attach our gusset. So for this step, grab your complete gusset, one of your main panels, and a few of your sewing clips. And we're going to attach the gusset wrong sides together. The wrong side of your gusset is the side where your seams are showing. So pick up either one of your main panels. If you're using the panel with the flap, the wrong side is the side where the flap is shown. So we're going to start from the upper right corner. It doesn't matter if it's left or right, just start with one side. And we're going to add a few clips at the top edge of our main panel in gusset. Then we're going to find our centers, so match our centers up from the bottom. Add a few clips here. And then we're going to move towards the other end of our main panel and add a few clips there. So we haven't clipped our curves yet. Grab your scissors and make a few small snips, about 1/8 of an inch long. So just make a couple of snips around that curve because we want this to lay flat as we clip our gusset to our main panel. So we want this to be seamless. So we're going to work our way around. And when it comes to hugging the curves, I like to add a little bit of glue to the outside edge of the main panel. You can use DST if you prefer, but I like the glue because it has a good adhesion. So I'm just going to add a little bit there, and all I'm going to do is just press the gusset towards the corner and let that curve naturally around. So once you've attached the gusset to the curve and you like the way it looks, add a few clips to keep it in place, and then work your way up towards the top of the bag. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. So add a little bit of glue. Just work that curve right in there. Press down. We're trying to avoid any creases, so just make sure this sits nice and flat, because the creases will not make this vinyl look pretty once we put it all together. So once you're done, your gusset should look like this. Your curves should be nice and taut without creases or wrinkles. It should lie nicely flat. Next, we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the top all the way around to the other side. Make sure we backstitch neatly. Now that we have attached the gusset to the main panel, your top trim pieces should be even and flush against one another. Your corner should be very smooth and round. There should be no puckers. If you do have some puckering going on, just unstitch and reattach your gusset and just make sure that it's nice and flat at the corners here. And if you have to, it's probably best to use a zipper foot so that you can hug those curves really nicely. At this point in time, we are going to repeat the same step and attach our second panel to the other side of the gusset. Just remember to make sure that it is wrong sides together. Now that our two panels are attached to our gusset, everything should be looking nice and really cute. We gather your two trim pieces, and I'm going to use my point turn tool. This is so that when I get close to the curve, I can lay down that trim and get some of those puckers out. So if you have something with a flat edge that is round, you can use this. You can use that in this step. So let's just start with one of our trim pieces, and we have the same concept as we've done before. The only part is that it may be a little tricky for you all when you get around the edge, but I'm going to help you out in this step. So let's just remove the DST from one side of the trim piece. And you can start on either side. It doesn't really matter. We want to, again, lay our trim, but not so close to the center line, especially at the top, because we have a little bit of extra fabric to work with, and we need to have enough room to fold over our trim piece without, we're trying to make sure we cover our stitch line. So we need to have enough trim to cover our stitch line. So let's just continue to go around our bag with our trim. Maybe it'll help if I lay it down. So, and it will help either way. So let's lay down our main panel facing down. And this step here, as we get to this corner, this first corner or curve, and it might be best if you all just work it this way and just press and turn. Press and turn. And it's okay if you're flattening, if you're pressing down on a clear vinyl. We're going to use a blow dryer the next step. We're going to smooth all that out. So just press and turn and hug that corner really good until you get to your straightaway. So now that I am at the straight edge, continue adding your trim all the way down. And again, keep in mind that we want to cover our stitches. So if your stitch is showing on the other side, readjust your trim and just make sure it's covered. All right. So same thing here. Push it in, turn, press, turn. Okay. All right. So hopefully that wasn't too bad. Once you make a couple, I promise you it gets easier. And I left a little bit of overhang just in case, so don't worry about that. We're going to trim that off. Okay, so get your pointy tool and just press in your vinyl into the trim. Okay, so it should look like this on the other side. I'm going to fix that. And right now, let's remove the other tape or the backing off of the DST on the other side. And let's fold over our trim, making sure that our raw edges meet. Okay, so let's skip the corners for right now and let's work on the flat edge. Okay, skipping the corner again and going to the other side. All right. So what I want to do here at the corners, I want to go over and flip. I want to flip the main panel over, and I want to readjust my trim piece because I have a little bit of my stitching showing. So I just want to readjust so that I can have nice coverage. Then I'm going to reach inside my bag like so, and I'm just using my hand to press down at that corner. And I'm probably going to add a little bit of glue here because I don't have the adhesion that I want. And then I'm going to go on the lay down the main panel and take my tool, and I'm just using this to make the surface flat. So again, make sure that your trim is even with the other side. You want the raw edges to match so everything should be even all the way around. You can get the tool and just lay that flat, and this is going to help with the puckers. So as you can see here, I have a nice flat surface for my trim. You should have natural puckers, but you shouldn't have any of your fabric overlapping each other or anything like that. So turn it over on the other side, and we're going to flatten that out too. So this you're just going to have to really work with. It's not going to be perfect the first time, so you're just going to have to readjust the trim and lay it flat. Lay your main panel flat so you can really work on those curves. So both of your trim pieces should now be attached to the bag. We're going to go to the sewing machine and top stitch 1/8 of an inch around the perimeter of the trim. We're top stitching on the inside portion of the trim piece where the raw edges are, not on the outside, but the inside where the raw edges meet. When we start our top stitch, we're top stitching the exterior portion of our bag because we want those beautiful stitches to show through. So when we get to the sewing machine, this is how your bag should lay, and it's okay if you have to compress. We're going to get a blow dryer and smooth all the creases out, but we are top stitching on the exterior side of the trim all the way around. So let's do that now. Our trim is now top stitched to our bag. We're going to trim any excess fabric. Just cut that right at the edge or right above the top trim piece. So we're just trimming that down, and it won't matter because we're getting ready to cover our corners with our corner tabs. So now let's put this to the side. Gather your corner tabs and your 8mm rivets. If you use the SVG file, you should already have your holes cut out. But if you don't, just use the template and mark the placement holes for your rivets on each of your corner tabs. And we're going to flip our corner tabs over, wrong side facing up, and add a strip of DST to the back side of your corner tab. And we're going to do that for all four. Let's grab our tote, and what we're going to do is remove the backing off of the DST, and we're going to lay 1/2 of the corner tab on one side and fold that over to the other side. And we want to make sure that we don't have any spacing on the edges, so try to get that as close to the edge as you can. And we want to make sure that our corner tabs are at least matching each side. So we're going to do that on all 3 of the corners remaining. So with your leather hole punch tool or whatever tool that you have to punch holes, punch your rivet hole right through the mark that we've made. It might be a little tough to get through all the layers, but that is the objective. So make sure that our hole is going through and through. Okay, now that we have punched a hole through all the layers, we need to install our rivets on each corner. And with your rivet press, set those rivets into place. So all of your corner tabs should now be riveted into place. And we're going to now move on to our strap connectors. So gather your 2 strap connectors, your 2 D-rings, and 4 of your 10mm rivets. And if you use the SVG file, you will already have your holes cut out for you. But if you did not, just use your pattern as a template and mark your holes onto the right side of your strap connector. Let's flip these over to the wrong side facing up. And remember, we want the wrong side to be the side where our top stitching is not so neat. According to your pattern measurements, mark your horizontal lines onto your strap connectors. And then we're going to add a strip of DST to each end of your strap connector. We don't want the DST in the center because our D-ring will be placed here, and we don't want the glue to prevent the D-ring from moving freely. Let's grab our tote bag, and we're going to mark our center line on our gusset. So grab your ruler and a leather marking pen or an erasable marker and mark our placement line for our strap connector. And we're going to do that for each side. The measurements are in the pattern. Now we need to identify which end has the 2-inch mark. So with your ruler, find out where that 2-inch line is, and this is going to be on this end, and this is the end that we want to place inside of our tote bag. So let's grab our tote and remove the DST, and with the 2-inch line, we're going to place our strap connector on the interior side of our bag, and we want to line our connector right up against our center line. This is our center line between the two outer edges. So once we have put that into place, grab your D-ring, slide that down your strap connector, and remove the backing from the top of the strap connector, and just fold your connector over, and just make sure that you are aligning the bottom edge along with the side edges. So we want everything to be nice and even all the way around. We're going to repeat the same step on the other side and place that down. So now you should have both of your strap connectors attached to the gusset side of the bag. If you already have pre-cut holes, use your awl and just guide that through to the other side so that you can make a hole through your vinyl, because it may be a little difficult to use your leather hole punch in this step. Next, we need to install our rivets. So we're placing 2 on each side. Okay, and once we're done, we need to set our rivets into place. Your rivets should now be installed on your strap connector pieces. And if 10 millimeters is too long of a rivet, then you can just size down to a size 8. So our bag is a little crinkly. It's not perfectly shaped. So I'm going to get a blow dryer and smooth all this out. And once I'm done, our tote bag will be complete and we can start working on our zip pouch. So let's apply some heat to the bag and straighten this tote out. After you applied some heat, I'm just going to manipulate the bag a little bit so I can shape it the way that I want it to look. And when you're done, just apply it to a cool surface and it will start to harden. And I'm going to secure my flap so it doesn't pull down on the back panel here. And it's starting to look good. It's starting to look a lot better after you put a blow dryer to it. We're getting ready to work on our zip pouch. Mark your placement lines for where your zipper tape will lay. On one panel, one line should be at 3/8 of an inch, and I'll mark that with an X so I can remember. And on the opposite side, it should be marked at a 1/2 inch. On the second panel, you would do the opposite. On the right side, you will mark 3/8 of an inch, and I'll mark that with an X so I can remember. And on the opposite side, you will mark a 1/2 inch. Now that our 2 panels have been marked, let's place that to the side. And we need to retrieve our zipper tape. So what we're going to do is separate our zipper teeth just about 1 inch down. We're getting ready to form a 90-degree angle. If you need help, you can grab your ruler and mark a line a 1/2 inch away from the raw edge of your zipper tape. And you're going to do the same on the other side. These will now be your pinch lines. So we're going to pinch and fold our zipper tape right up underneath our zipper teeth. This is going to form our 90-degree angle. Now you can go to the sewing machine and base the zipper tape down, or you can use a lighter and melt a little bit of that tape and stick it together. Be careful, this might be a little hot, and we will do the same to the other side. I just think using a lighter is a lot faster. Okay. And once you're done, your zipper teeth should look like this. So on the opposite end, grab your zipper, your number 5 zipper pull, and we're going to install our zipper onto our zipper tape, like so. Just like that. And we're done with our zipper tape. Grab the zipper tab, and we're going to mark a center line lengthwise on the 1 1/4 inch side. Add your DST to the wrong side of your zipper tab and remove both of the backing pieces. And with the raw edge of your zipper tape, lay that right up against the center line and fold over your zipper tab so that the raw edges meet. We're going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to top stitch across the raw edge of our zipper tab. Grab your exterior panel that has the 1/2 inch mark to the left. If you're using a label on the front of your pouch, you might want to have your zipper open from left to right as opposed to right to left like it is in the pattern. However, today we're going to keep it the same, and I want you to lay your zipper tape right side facing down between the 2 lines that you've made. We're going to clip that into place, take it to our sewing machine, and we're going to base stitch alongside the top edge of our exterior panel. After we have basted our zipper onto our exterior panel, grab your lining and we're going to turn that over right side facing down, and we're going to align that at the top edge of our exterior panel piece. Grab a marker and we're just going to make a small line or indentation where our zipper ends and where it begins. And we're going to stitch a 3/8 inch seam allowance across between the 2 lines. So don't go past the lines, but we're stitching between the line with the 3/8 inch seam allowance. Next, we're going to add a strip of DST to the top edge of our lining piece. You can also do the same on the exterior side, on the wrong side. However, if you don't want to waste your DST, you can just add the DST to the corners of your exterior and lining piece. But I just like to keep everything uniform, and the reason that I add the DST is to keep the lining out of the seams, and I like to also ensure that my exterior lays flat when we get ready to top stitch. So let's add our DST along the top edge of our lining piece, and I'm going to flip it over and do the same. And that way you don't have to worry about doing it at the end. You can just do it now and be done with it. Okay, so let's remove the backing from the DST. And I'm just going to pull the exterior piece down and just press alongside the seams. And I'm going to do the same on the other side where the lining piece is. And just pull that down so we can get a good fold. And just make sure that everything is even all the way across. So if you need to make some adjustments, you can. We're going to the sewing machine next, and we're going to top stitch between the beginning and the end of the zipper. So we're only top stitching from here until we get to this point, all the way across. So once you're done, this is how your exterior panel should look. We're going to repeat the same steps on the other side of our zipper tape. So grab your second panel, and we're going to flip this over, wrong side, right side facing down, so right sides together, and we're going to align our zipper tab right up against the line to the right and continue clipping down along the top edge of the second panel. And we're going to go to the sewing machine and base stitch our zipper tape onto our second panel. All right, now that your zipper tape is basted to the second exterior panel, grab your lining, again, right side facing down, align your lining towards the top of the exterior panel and clip that into place. And as we've done before, make your marks where your zipper begins and where it ends. Then we're going to our sewing machine next, and we're going to stitch a 3/8 inch seam allowance between the first and ending at the second line. After we're done stitching, add the DST at the top edge of the exterior and lining piece. And remove the backing and press the lining away from the zipper. And we're going to do the same for the exterior. Press that down. And once again, we're going to top stitch from the beginning to the end of the zipper tape. Once you're done, your two panels should look like this one here. Let's open our zipper, and we're going to take our two panels, our exterior panels, and we're going to place them right sides together. I want you to turn it to the side, and I want you to concentrate on this corner. We're aligning our two exterior pieces side by side. They should be flat and even at the top edge. And we're going to clip that in place, and we're going to do the same down the side of the exterior panel. Once again, line up your edges at the bottom, clip in place. And when we get to the other side, we're going to start at the top edge. Make sure they are aligned and even, and clip that into place. For the lining pieces, we're doing the same. However, we're going to leave a gap that will be open so we can birth the bag through that hole. So let's start on the right side, or either side, it really doesn't matter. Start on one side, and once again, we want to align our lining pieces at the top edge together and make sure that they are even. And we're going to continue to clip down the side. Once we get to the bottom, make sure that your bottom panels are aligned, and we're going to place one clip at each end because once again, we're leaving this open. Turn the pouch over to the other side, match up your edges here at the corner, and clip in place. All right. I want you to pay special attention to the corners here. We're not going to stitch across. They are their own separate entity. So we're going to stitch down one side for the exterior, and we're going to separate down the other side for the lining. There will be a gap, just like this here. The reason that I am doing this is so once we birth the pouch, we can lay our seams flat and you won't have a divot on the edges of the pouch. And I'll show you what I mean once I'm done here. So we're going to go to our sewing machine, and we're going to stitch a 3/8 inch seam allowance down the side, bottom, and up the other side. We're not stitching across, we're stopping our stitch at the ends here. We're going to do the same, except we're starting a 3/8 inch seam allowance, but we're gradually going to increase to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. When we get to the bottom, we are only stitching from the edge to the lines. So we're stitching a 1/2 inch here, leave a space open, start your stitch again, 1/2 inch to the end. To the other side, we're starting a 1/2 inch, and we're going to gradually, we're going to gradually decrease our stitch to a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So let's go to the sewing machine and do that now. All of your seams should be sewn shut. Again, we left an opening right there between the exterior panel and the lining, and we've done so all the way across. So at this point, we are now going to sew our box corners. So pull your fabric apart, and we are going to open our seams on the side and bottom edges, and we want to carefully line up our seam down the center. So I know this can be a little tricky, so I'm going to use some DST, and I'm going to place that right up against the edge of where my seam is, so that when I place them together, they will not shift when I sew, and I will have a perfect line from the side and the bottom seams. I just have a small strip of DST, and I'm just going to open that seam up a bit. Just kind of get in there. I know it's kind of tight, and just lay that across the edge there. Okay. And just remove the backing, and then press these two seams together, making sure that we line up our lines on the interior side. Okay. And once you've done that, clip it in place, and we are going to do the same for all 4 corners of the bag. All of your box corners should now be clipped. So starting with the lining, we're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both ends. And for the exterior, we're just going to sew a 3/8 inch seam allowance on both ends. So let's do that now. So your box corner should now be closed. We're going to trim down some of the fabric. Leave about 1/4 inch remaining. And about, the same on this end as well. We're going to add DST to about 1 inch away from the top edge of our seam, and we're going to trim the remaining. We're just leaving some of the fabric untrimmed so that we can open our seams and lay them flat before we birth the bag. So if you need to mark a line, this is how much we're going to leave untrimmed. So we're doing the same on each side, and at this point, if you wish to trim down your seams, you can. If you wish to wait until after you apply the DST, that's okay. But we're just taking a little bit off, leaving about 1/4 inch remaining. Don't cut too close to the stitch line like I did here. And we're going to do the same for the lining. Let's apply our DST to the untrimmed seams. Okay. And give that a good press all the way around, and let's remove the backing. So your DST should be on the front and the back. Reach your hand through and lay those seams flat. Your side seams should now look like this here. They should all be flat, and we'll fix the ones that didn't lay as flat when we turn it through. But for right now, as long as you have this part down, you are good to go. Okay, so reach in, your zipper should be open, and we're going to pull our bag through our hole. And if you need to use a pointy tool to push out your box corners, you can. All right. And what we're going to do here is make sure that our seams are pushed out. So we don't want, that is the reason why we flatten our seams, because we don't want to have an indentation right here. We want to push all that out. So while you still have the bag open, reach inside and try to get right where those seams are. And just push that out. And then do the same for the lining. So you have to come out of the inside of the hole there and just push that lining up. There we go. And then push your lining down inside where it can create a natural seam. And we're going to clip that into place. And we're going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to top stitch our lining shut. All right, our lining is now shut, so let's push that inside of our bag and push it out against the corners of our exterior pouch. And we're going to start concentrating on this opening here. So grab your glue and just add a little bit between the seams, like so. And we're going to push or press our seams together. It should be aligned, so seam to seam. And we will clip this in place so that the glue can dry. Now once your seams are flat and dried, you now have an attractive pouch to complement your tote bag. All right, we made it to the finish line. The last thing that we have to do is make our strap. So gather your strap, your 2 swivel hooks, 1 strap adjuster, and 2 of your 8 or 10 millimeter rivets. And let's put our hardware to the side for now. So on the wrong side of your strap, we're going to draw a line lengthwise at 1.5 inches. I'm going to take my 1/2 inch DST and apply that down the center of my strap, right on the center line. Go all the way down to the end of your strap. Remove the backing off of the DST, about halfway down, and we're going to match up our raw edges to the center line. Be sure to leave a very small gap so that we have enough space when we fold our strap over and half again. So we just want to prevent our strap from being wavy and not straight. So just do that all the way until you get to the end of the strap. After you have folded your raw edges to the center, leaving a very small gap, we're going to fold our strap over once again, and we're going to clip that into place. And once you have clipped your strap all the way down to the end, we're going to top stitch on both sides of our strap. So let's do that now. Our strap should now be top stitched on both sides. Let's grab our hardware that we went over a few minutes ago. We're going to make a 3-inch line from the bottom edge of the wrong side of our strap. So this is going to be our fold over line. Grab your strap adjuster and thread your strap through one hole and back down over the center bar. And we're going to line up the bottom edge of our strap to the line that we just marked and clip that into place. All right. With our leather hole puncher, we're going to punch a rivet through the center of our lower strap end. I forgot to mention, if you wish to edge coat your raw edge or add a strap in, do that now before you start to put your strap together. Today I'm just not going to do that. So I have the raw edge lined up with a 3-inch marked line. I'm getting ready to punch a hole through the center of the lower end of my strap, and I'm just turning it over to make sure it's aligned. Punch a hole. Install one of your rivets. And with your rivet press, set your rivet into place. Now that we secured our strap adjuster, on the opposite end of your strap, mark another 3-inch line from the raw edge. And we're going to grab one of our swivel hooks and make sure that our swivel hook is facing on the right side of our strap. So thread your swivel hook through, grab the opposite end of your strap and thread it through the strap adjuster on the side where we just secured it with the rivet. Pull your strap through, back over to the other side. Now we're going to grab our second swivel hook and we're going to install our swivel hook on the right side of our strap. Take the raw edge of your strap end and put it right up against the 3-inch line. Clip it in place. And once again, find your center, punch a hole for your rivet. Okay. Grab your rivet and set it into place. And before you do this, make sure your strap is not tangled or facing the wrong directions. All right. And this is now, you now have completed your strap for your Juji tote bag. All right, we are wrapping this thing up. So here's your pouch, which goes on the inside of our bag. We can secure that with our twist lock flap here. And let's attach our crossbody strap. And we are all done here. And this is how your Juji tote should look.